Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all to the Boombox Guru channel. I'm your host, LB. So, for this video, man, I decided I wanted to talk about some of my top metal albums of the year 1992. Of course, this year, a lot of my favorite metal albums that came out in that year are going to be turning 30 years old. So, I decided I would grab a few out of my CD collection and, maybe give a brief, discussion about them, maybe tell what type of impact these records had on me, why I enjoy them so much, and why they're my favorites, man. So I got 10 CDs right here that I picked that I wanted to talk about today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing started, man, because I don't want this to be an overly long video. So the first album that I picked, this one was a no-brainer for me, and that is the self-titled debut album from Body Count. And of course, this month, actually in March, depending on when this video dropped, man, either a few days ago or last week, this album actually celebrated its 30th anniversary, man. This record had a huge impact on me when I was a kid. I remember the first time I ever heard about Body Count, the first time I ever knew about Ice-T actually having a metal band was when VH1 did a Behind the Music episode on him. And when they started talking about the cop killer controversy and Body Count, I remember they started playing a few of the songs from this album. They started playing like little snippets of the videos, and it just blew me away, man, because that was the first time in my life that I had ever seen an all black heavy metal band. It just blew me away. Like when I saw those images of the little videos that they showed, it just burnt an image in my brain where I'm like, yo, these are black dudes playing heavy metal music. I've never seen that before. And it just really struck a chord with me, and it sparked my interest. It like lit up that spark in me to journey on and start getting into more rock music and heavier metal and even more extreme stuff as I got older, man. So this album set that stage. It lit that spark in me. And it's just always been one of my favorite metal records. I mean, the Sabbathy inspired riffs, the way that they take thrash metal and hardcore punk and crossover thrash, the way they just fuse all that together. They put out a great record here, man. So many classic songs on here. I mean, let's see, the title track Body Count, which originally appeared on Ice-T's OG, Original Gangster album, Bowels of the Devil, KKK Bitch, which is a really funny song, but a great one at that. Voodoo, The Winner Loses, There Goes the Neighborhood, Evil Dick, another sort of funny song with a bit of a sense of humor. Mama's Gotta Die Tonight. Unfortunately, I don't have the original pressing, the first pressing that had the Cop Killer song on it. This one is the second pressing, but even without the song Cop Killer being on this album, it's still a great heavy metal record. I have come across the OG pressing a few times, but the couple times that I saw it, it wasn't in really good condition. So hopefully one day I'll be able to come across one that's in great condition, and I'll be able to afford it. But yeah, even without the song Cop Killer, this is still a great record. This is definitely a metal milestone in my book, and one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time, as well as to come out in the 90s, man. So happy 30th anniversary to the self-titled debut of Body Count, man. All right, so this next album and this band, probably most of you may not be all that familiar with them, and then there could be a few of you that watch my channel that are familiar with them. But my next pick was 24/7 Spies with Strength in Numbers. And I always take the opportunity to always want to talk about this album and promote it as much as I can, because I think that this is probably one of the most underrated, criminally underrated metal albums ever released, man. 24/7 Spies, I mean, they were pioneers who laid the groundwork for a lot of the alternative metal movement, what a lot of the new metal bands started doing later in the late 90s and early 2000s. This was a band that really laid the foundation for that, and they've never really gotten the recognition that they deserve, as far as, like, I guess on a mainstream scale, but real heads know. The real ones, the ones that matter, they know what 24/7 Spies has done. This was their third album, And Strength in Numbers, in my opinion, I think this is one of their best records. I actually like this album better than the first two records. Harder Than You, Gumbo Millennium, those are usually the ones that most fans seem to like talk about the most and really gravitate to. But I think that this album was far better than both of those records, man. And I actually like this lineup of the band better. There was just so many good tracks on here, man. I really feel that the Strength in Numbers was the record where 24/7 Spies really defined that heavy metal soul sound that they created. You know, at this time, you know, everybody was doing funk metal and stuff of that nature. What you get on this record, groove metal was becoming real popular, mainly because of Pantera. You got a lot of groovy riffs on here too. But never had I ever heard a metal band blend heavy metal with R&B and soul music, which is what the band 24/7 Spies does on this record. They take R&B and soul, infuse it with heavy metal, which I thought was amazing. And there's even a straight up reggae track on here. But what's so interesting is that reggae song, it's not an outlier. It fits well within the context of the record, the music, the subject matter. A lot of social commentary on this record, but just an all around great record, man. Like East West Records, man, they really dropped the ball on this record, man. Because I feel like this album should have propelled 24/7 Spies to the next level, to be one of the biggest bands of the 90s and then beyond, man. But they just dropped the ball. And Jimmy Hazel, this gentleman right here, he talks about it a lot. He talks about in interviews why the band didn't get the promotion and things that they deserve. You can watch a few of his interviews where he discusses that, man. But Strength in Numbers, man, I gotta give this album the recognition it deserves. Definitely an awesome metal album to come out in the 90s, man. And honestly, I think this is their best record. Even though I do like a few of the other ones they've done later, to me, this is my go-to. This is my favorite 24/7 Spies album. This is the one that I always grab whenever I'm in the mood to listen to them, man. So definitely check out Strength in Numbers. It's available for streaming, so go stream it, download it, whatever, purchase it. If you can find a physical copy, I found this on eBay for like $2, and it was in very good condition. But just an often overlooked classic masterpiece in heavy metal music, in my opinion. All right, so this next CD that I'm about to pull up, and this is another one that just recently celebrated its 30th anniversary in March, and that is Le Sexorcisto, Devil Music Volume 1 by White Zombie. So, you know, White Zombie is one of my favorite metal bands of all time. Sometimes I have a hard time deciding which one of their albums I like the best between Le Sexorcisto and Astro Creep. Depending on the day, it could be either one of them. But since it's 1992, man, we're gonna talk about Le Sexorcisto, man. This was White Zombie's third album, and it was also the first album where they fully transitioned into a metal band. Because prior to this record, White Zombie was more in the like kind of hardcore punk, like noise rock scene in New York City. But with the addition of Jay Younger and well, of course, Ivan DePrume had already been in the band, but when Jay Younger joined the band, that's when the sound really shifted to more heavy metal and so forth, man. But this is one of my favorite heavy metal albums of all time. The way that they took groove metal, those Pantera groove metal, that groove metal style, and they blended it with psychedelia, 60s dance music, stoner rock, even sludge metal. It was just so many different musical styles blended together, and it was interesting, man. And White Zombie, they were different. They sounded different. They looked different. They didn't look like most metal bands. And honestly, they had the distinction, I believe, of being the only metal band to get played on MTV's 120 Minutes, which was the alternative show, and Headbangers Ball. So they had that distinction of being one of the only bands to do that. And you know, this is just one of the most unique heavy metal albums of all time. And I know at that time it was definitely just something that was totally different. But honestly, even by today's standards, I don't think I've heard any metal album that sounds quite like Le Sexorcisto. I just think that it's just a unique record, even by today's standards. So definitely had to have this in my pick of one of my top albums of 1992, man. Just a great record, man. And it was a huge success, propelled White Zombie to superstardom. They ended up being one of the biggest bands in the 90s. And it also was a catalyst for Rob Zombie's later hugely successful solo career, man. But probably one of the more well-known records on this list here that most people, even casual music fans will know about this record, man. So yeah, La Sexorcisto, Devil Music Volume 1 by White Zombie. Okay, so next record is another one of my favorite bands, and I chose Angel Dust by Faith No More. So the first time I ever heard Faith No More was actually the song called Midlife Crisis. That song actually got played on, it was on GTA San Andreas, Radio X. Midlife Crisis was on that radio station. That was one of my favorite radio stations to listen to when I played that game. And Angel Dust, I think Angel Dust often gets overshadowed because of the huge success that the previous album, The Real Thing, had, because Epic was a huge song. I think The Real Thing had that album had more of an impact on the music scene, but Angel Dust was a great follow-up. The difference between the two is that Angel Dust is a lot more experimental, because in between this album and the previous record, The Real Thing, Mike Patton, his first band and his other band, Mr. Bungle, they did their debut album. They put out their debut album, which I also have in my CD collection, the first Mr. Bungle album. And anybody that's heard that first Mr. Bungle album knows how wacky that record is. That's one of the weirdest metal albums I have ever heard, but it's good. That's the thing that's so crazy about it. It's good. But yeah, in between that time, that record came out, and I think Mike Patton, he brought a lot of that zany, out of this world, unorthodox style onto Angel Dust, because Angel Dust is a lot more experimental compared to The Real Thing. The Real Thing, you definitely got hints that Faith No More wasn't your average metal band, that they were something different. But Angel Dust is that record, in my opinion, where they really just let it all out, and they just showed everybody yo, we're not the typical metal band that you're used to. There's some songs here that aren't even metal, man. Some of them are kind of lounge songs, or kind of slow rockabilly type tracks. Some versions of this album has a hidden track, which is a cover of Lionel Richie's Easy. Unfortunately, I don't have that version. That kind of sucks, but in all around, man, it's still a great record. I mean, the music on here is still heavy. Still a lot of heavy riffs on here, courtesy of Jim Martin, although this will end up being his last album with the band. But it's just a little bit more zanier and a little bit more out there compared to The Real Thing and so forth, man. But just a great record. I always say that Angel Dust was the album where Faith No More weeded out the fair weather fans, the people that only liked them because of Epic. This record kind of weeded them out. This was for the true Faith No More fans. But I really enjoy it, and honestly, even though sometimes I can be more of a Real Thing type of guy, I truly believe that Angel Dust was a better record, and it was definitely a worthy follow-up to their album. Alright, so next album, and this is another band that I'm pretty sure most of y'all know. Well, I know most everybody's gonna know this band anyway. They were one of the big four of grunge, and that is Alice in Chains, man, with Dirt. Man, what a great record, man. One of my favorite albums of all time right here. And I know some of you might be looking at this video and well, wait a minute, Alice in Chains isn't a metal band or so forth. Look, listen. I will argue with you until infinity that Alice in Chains was a metal band, and I will argue with you up and down that Dirt is a metal record. You can't tell me that this isn't metal. All right, there's a lot of doomy and sludgy elements on this record. Those riffs, come on, it's a metal album. I mean, I know they got lumped in the grunge thing for marketing purposes, man. But it's a metal record. Honestly, that's what it is. It's a metal record, and it's one of the best freaking metal albums of all time right here. I love the cover art. One of my favorite album covers too, right here. But man, Dirt. The first time I ever heard Dirt, or the first time I heard anything from this album, again, it goes back to GTA San Andreas Radio X. The big hit from this album, well, one of the big hits, Them Bones, was on that radio station. And that was my introduction to Alice in Chains right there. But other than that, so many great songs on here. Damn That River. What's that? Rain When I Die. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had a hard time seeing the titles. Down in a Hole. Down in a Hole is one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs. That song is always running around in my head throughout most of the day, every day. Like, I don't even have to really be even into Alice in Chains at the moment. That song just pops in my head. It's a sad song, but it's very catchy. Sick Man, Rooster. Everybody knows Rooster. I would say Rooster is probably the biggest hit from this album. Junkhead, the title track Dirt, Godsmack. I know the band Godsmack claims that they didn't get their name from that title, but I honestly don't believe that. I really don't believe that. Let's see here. Hate to Feel, Angry Chair. Honestly, every track on this album is good. I don't listen to Rooster all that much because Rooster, even though it's a great song, Rooster has been overplayed so much. But still, as a whole, every song on this album is great. There's no filler tracks on here. And it was just a well put together record, man. And, it's a bit of a heavy record, not just sonically, but subject matter wise, because like Lane Staley, man, he was really deep into his drug addiction at this point. Well, all the guys were dealing with drug addictions, but specifically Lane Staley, he was really down in it at this point, man. And we all know, what happened in the end, 10 years later. But a lot of these songs are about that. A lot of these songs are about the drug addiction, the substance abuse and everything, and their feelings and their perspectives on it, man. So it's a heavy record. It's subject matter wise too, but it's such a really good album. I think that's what makes this such a great album, is that they managed to take all of that and invoke those emotions. Even if you're somebody that can't necessarily relate to it, you sort of like when you listen to this record, you empathize with it. You know what I'm saying? But just a great record. One of the greatest albums of all time. One of the greatest albums to come out of that Seattle grunge scene. And like I said, it's a metal album. So I'm keeping it in my list. I don't care what any of you detractors say. To me, this is a metal album, and it's one of the greatest metal albums of all time right here. But that's Dirt by Alice in Chains, man. One of my favorite albums of all time right here, man. All right, so the next CD I got on here. This is one of probably the biggest bands that I had in this pick, man. That I had on my list, bro. But I went with Megadeath, Countdown to Extinction. So again, a video game connection. First time I ever heard Megadeth, first Megadeth song I ever heard was Symphony of Destruction. And if you are of age, you probably remember hearing that song in a video game that came out like in 2003 called True Crime Streets of LA. If you remember that video game, you probably know the song, because I used to own that video game when it came out, man. And Symphony of Destruction was the first time I'd ever heard Megadeth. And I also remember around that time, that was around the time when they had reissued the remixed and remastered versions of these albums, which I also have a version of that. But this is the OG pressing. I found this at a bookstore about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. But this is the OG pressing. I have pretty much all of the OG pressings except for Killing Is My Business. But anyway, Countdown to Extinction. This was the follow-up to the great Rust in Peace, which is another one of my favorite Megadeth albums. But, if I had to pick between the two, I think I'm probably going to go with Countdown to Extinction as my favorite, because that was the first time I ever heard Megadeth. And I know a lot of people have their critiques about Countdown to Extinction. But it's a little bit more commercial. It's not as progressive and as complex as Rust in Peace, but at the same time, it's still a lot of great music, man. I feel like the band really matured with Countdown to Extinction. Still a lot of great music, and there's even a lot of moments on here where they kind of slightly go back to that more technical, kind of complex style of Rust in Peace. I mean, come on, this was the classic lineup. This was the second album with the classic lineup. Dave Mustaine, Ellefson, Nick Menza, Marty Friedman. All of them are great musicians. So of course, it's no matter how maybe toned down it may be, it's still going to be great music. But I like how they added a little bit more melody into the sound. It's not straightforward thrash, but even though they kind of teeter on that commercial side, it's still a lot of great heavy music on here. A lot of great heavy riffs. And I don't know what Dave Mustaine was doing at this time vocally, but this is where he really started to improve as a vocalist compared to the previous records. I mean, the previous records, he had that kind of that signature like evil like kind of snarl, but here he kind of you started to get a little bit of tune and a lot of it, man, a little bit more range in his vocals, man. But this is just a great record all around, man. I don't care what nobody say about it was a little bit more commercial. It's just because something's commercial don't necessarily mean that it sucks either. If it is commercial, it was good commercial, because these songs are still heavy and they still pack a punch. And I actually think this album sold more than Rust in Peace. But I think it was a great follow up, and it's personally one of my top favorite Megadeth albums. So, Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth. If you do come across this album, try to get the OG pressing. Don't go for the remix and remaster versions. Go for the OG pressings, because the OG pressings have a more rawer sound. So definitely check that out. And you can usually find the OG pressings at any used mom and pop record store or used CD section, man. All right, next album. This is another one of the bigger bands that come out in the 90s, man. I got into this band late. It was like right when I was in high school when I first heard about them, and unfortunately it was under tragic circumstances because one of the iconic member was actually murdered. Unfortunately, man, that was how I caught wind of them. But Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. Yeah, so there was a friend I used to hang out with like some years ago. She was a big Pantera fan. I remember in her house she even had like a little shrine to him. So that was what really started to kind of make me dig deeper into Pantera. But man, I still remember the first time I ever heard Mouth of War. I remember when I heard that riff come in, and then I heard Phil Anselmo's vocals. I was like, boom. I was sold right then and there. I was like, yeah, I gotta get more. I gotta listen to more of this band. Yeah, and like I said, man, I was real late to the game. Listen, for me, cause I might be a little bit younger than some of you that's watching this, but I never saw Pantera a whole lot on MTV when I was growing up. I didn't see them a whole lot on MTV when I was growing up, so I missed that wave, man. But unfortunately, I didn't get to hear about them until what happened to Don Bad. But it is what it is. At least I got into the band. But Vulgar Display of Power, man. Like I said, when I first heard Mouth of War, man, that was it for me. I had to find more music. I had to hear this whole album, and I was just blown away by what I heard, man. I mean, the first 3 tracks are right there off the bat, like A New Level, and what's it, Effing Hostile? Yeah, gosh, man, out of here, man. And then you got let's see, Rise. That's another one of my favorite ones, man. I really dig that one. Let's see here. By Demons Be Driven. That riff, that's one of the illest riffs I think Dimebag ever did right there, man. That By Demons Be Driven. Hollow is a really great closer to the album. A sad song, but definitely the perfect closer to this record. This whole entire album I like, man. This Love, which was a big hit. No Good, Attack the Radical, Living the Whole, Regular People Can See. Man, this whole entire album, man. This whole entire album was just killer. No filler tracks or anything. just a killer. This is, to me, Vulgar Display of Power is the quintessential Pantera record. Really dig this record, man. I mean, I don't know. It's just so, I mean, the anger and the aggression, and man, this was a game changer, man. This album did in metal what Metallica's Black Album did. You know how, remember how when Metallica dropped the Black Album, a lot of metal bands were changing their style? Vulgar Display of Power did the same thing. How many other bands started to do groove metal that wasn't doing it prior to Pantera? And this album was the one that did it, man. But man, this album took Pantera to the next level, and why they ended up being the biggest heavy metal band in the 90s. And they carried the torch for metal in a decade where metal was seen as old school, a has-been genre, and so forth. They carried the torch for it, man. So yeah, man, I couldn't make this like list without putting this album on here. Just a groundbreaking metal record, man. A game changer for sure. All right, so next pick. Some of you probably will know this. Some of you probably might not. I think most people will probably know this album. But I picked Quattro by Flotsam and Jetsam, released in 92. I believe this came out. I hope this came out in 92. I think it did. Yeah, I think this album did come out in 92. If I'm wrong, oh well. But this is my favorite Flotsam and Jetsam album, actually, man. I actually kind of like this better than the ones that everybody else like. Most people like No Place for Disgrace or Doomsday for the Deceiver and so forth, but I actually like this one, man. Some people compare it to like Metallica's Black Album. They say that this album is Metallica's. This was like the same as Metallica doing the Black Album. I don't really agree with that, man. It's definitely different. It's different compared to the previous records. There's a little bit more of a modern metal sound compared to the more thrash, speed metal, or even power metal sound that they had on the previous records. But it's a good record. It's heavy. The riffs on here are amazing. Eric A.K., he took a different, more kind of aggressive approach to his vocals. Chris Cornell even co-wrote a song on this record. I think it's the Message. Yeah, Chris Cornell even co-wrote a song on this album. So I thought that was really cool, man. I guess it kind of does have a bit of that early 90s sort of kind of slightly grungy feel in some places, but this is a heavy freaking record, man. And there's some fast up tempo songs on here as well that kick butt too, man. But I like this album, man. Anytime I want to listen to Flotsam and Jetsam, man, this is usually the one I go for. So this is my favorite, and this is a Metal Mind Productions reissue. So it comes with a few bonus tracks. It comes with like some singles, Date with Hate, a few versions of Waiting Through the Darkness and stuff like that. But definitely one of the best 90s metal albums of all time right here. So if you never heard this one, Quattro by Flotsam and Jetsam, man, check it out, man. It's an amazing record. Amazing record. All right, so now we done got down to the last two. So this first one, well, not the first one, but the first of the last two is Biohazard with Urban Discipline. Released in 1992, of course. But yeah, man, one of the illest rap metal bands out there. And I don't know, maybe some of you can clarify this. Did Biohazard create rapcore? Did they? Because I was thinking about this while I was at work today. I was wondering who was considered rapcore before Biohazard. Maybe some of y'all can like educate me on that. But yeah, man. So Biohazard, man, interesting band. You know, they were part of that whole New York hardcore scene. That's where they came from, man. But what set them apart from a lot of those other bands was they started to implement like rapping into their sound. You know, they had the hardcore punk rhythms, the thrash, crossover thrash, speed metal tempos and stuff, but they were rapping the vocals. But they did it in a punk fashion. They did it in a punk fashion, man. But now lyrically, you know, they're not exactly Zack from Rage Against the Machine, but they do. They're straight to the point. You know, they just get their point across. And where they may lack in lyrical abilities, they make it up for it with their musicianship, their aggression, that sheer like New York tough guy attitude. Cause this is early '90s New York, man. This was when New York was still like the real New York, man. Not what it is now. Cause I think New York's gotten gentrified quite a bit now. So a lot of those neighborhoods ain't what it is. But this is '92, bro. This is '92. Just look at the video for Punishment. Look at the video for Punishment. Man, everybody in that video looked like that they could pull a razor blade out their mouth and just slash your freaking face. That's how everybody look. Everybody on that video look mean. Like they ready to like tear they ready to tear things up, man. But yeah, man, that really good rap metal. One of the best rap metal albums to come out, in my opinion. It's really heavy. I just really like the punk feel and those groovy riffs, man, and the aggressive vocal approaches and everything like that. Just a great record overall, man. One of the best rap metal albums of all time, in my opinion. So yeah, Urban Discipline, man, by Biohazard. If you have any qualms about rap metal, I recommend that this be one of the records that you check out. It could possibly change your mind about that genre. All right, man. So now we down to the last one, and you know what? Some people may have some feelings about this, but it is what it is, man. It's my list. All right, feel free to make your own. But I went with the self-titled debut from Rage Against the Machine, bro. I went with that, man. So now the first time I ever heard Rage Against the Machine was actually when they was coming out with the Battle of Los Angeles album in '99. But again, this goes back to GTA San Andreas. Man, listen, GTA San Andreas put me onto a lot of great music, bro. I probably wouldn't be listening to a lot of the stuff I listen to now if it hadn't been for me getting that game for Christmas that year. But again, it was on the Radio X. It was on the Radio X in-game station on GTA San Andreas. And Killing in the Name was on there. Killing in the Name. And that was I didn't even know Rage Against the Machine went back as far as '92 at that point. So I heard that, man. And of course, years later, I ended up buying the whole entire album. And it's a great record. One of the best rap metal albums of all time. To me, this is my favorite Rage Against the Machine album. I think it's their heaviest record. I think it's their most like really metal album that they ever put out. I think it's their most aggressive and rawest record, in my opinion. But this was a groundbreaking record. So many bands were influenced by Rage Against the Machine when they dropped this record. When Killing in the Name came out, there was a lot of people that saw that, and it just turned something in like, whoa, what are these guys doing? This is metal, but they're rapping. The vocalist is rapping. So many people like Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, for better or for worse, a lot of the new metal bands were inspired by what Rage Against the Machine did with this record. And let me tell you something. Rage wasn't the first band to fuse rap with metal, and nor do I think that they were the best ones to do it. But this album, this self-titled debut, really, it turned the tide, man. It created a whole generation of these different kind of bands, like rap metal or new metal or just new metal in general. It created a whole generation. And some people may look at that in a negative light, but I don't. I feel like, hey, something had to, everybody wasn't brought up on the same type of metal. There had to be some type of band or artist that kind of just change it and make it, appeal to a certain demographic of rock and metal fans. And I think that's what happened, man. But this is still a very influential record. Even now, there's a lot of rap metal bands are starting to make a bit of a comeback. And I've heard like a lot of similar styles that were displayed on this record in a lot of these newer bands that are coming out. And also, man, it put Tom Morello on the map. Tom Morello was the icon of the band. Even though Zach is the vocalist, and not to take nothing away from him, but Tom Morello is Rage Against the Machine, in my opinion, bro. He created his own unique guitar style. There's nobody that plays like Tom Morello. when you hear Tom Morello, you know it's him, because nobody else can play like him. They can try, but nobody can really replicate that, man. And he debuted that style on here, man, where he made his guitar mimic like a DJ scratching. Nobody was doing that, man. So he changed the game even in that factor, and the fact that that style is just so unique to him, even today, 30 years later, is just out of this world, man. But just an amazing record, one that I listen to quite a bit, all the time, man. It's just a great record. It just, like I said, they weren't the first ones to do it, but they sure were the first ones to kick down the door and just start a whole new movement, man. So yeah, Rage Against the Machine, their self-titled debut, just a great record, masterpiece in metal music, man, in my opinion. All right, so that's it for this video. I had 10 albums that I picked, man. I actually have been rehearsing doing this whole video for like 2 or 3 days before I actually got down to recording it, man. But yeah, that's my list of my top metal albums of 1992. There may be a part two. Where I talk about a few other albums, because there's a few other albums that I could have talked about tonight, but I didn't want this to be like an hour-long video or 2-hour-long video, man. But there could be possibly, Lord willing, there could be possibly a part two where I talk about a few more other albums, man. But yeah, 1992, man. I think 1992 was just a great year in music in general, especially in metal. And yeah, it just popped in my head, man, when I started seeing all these anniversaries of some of my favorite albums this year turning 30. I was like, yeah, I need to do a video like that. And a big shout out to the Sea of Tranquility channel, hosted by Pete Pardo. That was one of the reasons that was one of the things that really inspired me to want to do this, because he's been doing something where he's been talking about one album, like from his top 30 albums of 1992. He's like been talking about one album like a day, I think, or maybe every other day. He talks about an album from that year, and that's one of his favorites. So that's what really inspired me to want to do this video, man. And yeah, I had a lot of fun recording this video, man, because I like talking about music, especially my favorite kind of music, and my favorite kind of albums, man. So, man, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up and give me a like. Helps with the algorithm. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button and tap that bell so you'll be notified whenever I drop new content. I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to all my old and new subscribers, everybody that's been taking the time to watch the videos. I truly appreciate it. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day, a blessed week, and love, peace, and music. Peace out, y'all.